Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a software development problem that is, frankly, shockingly stubborn. It's been tripping up developers for over 15 years, and it all boils down to one very common SQL task. Let's get right into it.
So look at this number, 2.4 million. That's not just some random statistic. That's how many times a single question on Stack Overflow has been viewed. It tells you everything you need to know. The problem we're about to unpack is everywhere. And the solution? Well, it's not as simple as you'd think.
So what is this legendary question? It's something that gets right to the heart of working with databases. How do you update one table using information that's sitting in another one? Sounds pretty basic, right? But as millions of us have found out the hard way, the answer is, it depends.
To really get this, we gotta go back, way back. Our story starts in August of 2009. A user by the name of Ant Swift posts a question. He's got a classic database problem, and he needs some help.
Okay, so here's the setup. It's super simple. You've got two tables, sale and UD. The sale table has the correct data in a column called SID, and the goal is to get that data into the UD table. The key to connecting them is matching UD.ID with sale.UDID. And while Ant was asking specifically about SQL Server, his question basically opened a can of worms for the entire database world.
So first things first, let's answer Ant's original question. He was using SQL Server, which, thankfully, actually has a really clean and direct way to get this done.
The most popular way, the go-to solution in SQL Server, is to put a join clause right inside the update statement. This is awesome because it lets you treat the whole operation almost like a select query. You just join the tables together to find the right data. It's really elegant and powerful. So in T-SQL, which is SQL Server's specific flavor of SQL, the trick is adding a from clause to the update statement. This lets you give your target table an alias, join it to the source table, and just pull the value right over. For SQL Server developers, that from clause is the magic key. But this is where our simple story gets messy. Because if you take that perfectly good SQL Server query and you try to run it on a different database, yeah, it's probably going to blow up. You see, SQL isn't really one language. It's more like a family of dialects that are just similar enough to be confusing.
Take PostgreSQL, for instance. The syntax is so close, it feels like a trap. They both use a from clause. But in Postgres, you absolutely must not mention the table you're updating again in that clause. The system already knows you're updating the UD table. It is such a tiny, subtle difference that has caused an unbelievable amount of frustration. And oh, it doesn't stop there. MySQL comes in with its own unique structure where you put the join before the set clause. And then you have Oracle, which often makes you jump through hoops, like wrapping your data in something called an updatable view. Every single one of them is solving the exact same problem, but they're all speaking slightly different languages.
And of course, in a conversation that's been raging for 15 years, you're going to find some gold. One of the most upvoted comments on the whole thread from a user named Eugene just gives this piece of advice. Please don't use ASID as a field name. You know, that's a fair point, and a great reminder that good naming can save you from a lot more than just syntax errors. Now, putting aside those older methods for a second, there's a more modern approach that's become really popular, mainly because it's just easier to read. It's called the Common Table Expression, or CTE. And the good news is, most modern databases support it, including SQL Server and Postgres.
The beauty of a CTE is its simple two-step logic. First, you use the with clause to define a temporary named thing, the CTE, that joins your tables and gets all the data ready. Then, you just write a simple update targeting that temporary CTE, and the database is smart enough to follow that update all the way back to the real table. The result is code that is so much cleaner and easier to understand.
So this brings up a huge question, right? If this is such a common, everyday task, why in the world isn't there just one standard way to do it? Why is it so confusing? A comment on the Stack Overflow page just hits the nail on the head. The basic SQL commands, select, insert, delete, those are highly standardized. But when it came to more complex stuff, like updating from a join, the official standard kinda just left it out. This forced every database company to invent its own way of doing it, creating this portability nightmare we're all still living with today.
So after digging through all this history and all these different dialects, what's the actual takeaway for you, the person who just needs to get work done? We've boiled it all down into one final, super practical cheat sheet.
And here it is. This table sums up everything. You can see the different patterns for SQL Server, PostgreSQL, MySQL, and Oracle all right next to each other. And check out that last one for the official ANSI standard. It uses what's called a subquery. Now, it might not always be the absolute fastest, but it's the most portable. That's your best bet if you need to write code that works everywhere.
So what have we learned? The big lesson is that updating a table from another one is a totally normal thing to do, but the lack of a standard has created this minefield of different syntaxes. That powerful from clause you learned for SQL Server will fail you in PostgreSQL if you forget one tiny detail, and is completely wrong from MySQL or Oracle. In the end, what this really shows is that understanding these little differences is crucial. The real lesson is you've got to know your database.
And that brings me to a final thought. This question is stuck around for 15 years because it hits that perfect storm of being an extremely common problem with a non-standard solution. It really makes you wonder, in our world of AI, cloud, and brand new languages popping up every year, what are the problems we're dealing with today that developers will still be Googling in the year 2040? What's the next 15-year question?